What's up, beautiful people? Another day, another study. When you've been in clinical practice as long as I have, you've seen B12 deficiencies in a variety of clinical situations, whether that's mental health like depression, anxiety, people with inflammatory bowel disease or other gut issues that may impair absorption, or people on certain medications like proton pump inhibitors, the acid reflux medications, metformin, even sometimes the GLPs because they change transit through the gut. Well, this study was looking at vitamin B12 deficiency and its impact on healthcare, especially hospitalizations. Now, this study was in Brazil, so you can't take these results and extrapolate them or apply them to the US. But I think it's interesting to look at information like this. And during their review period, hospitalizations due to B12, B1, and B6 rose over time. And then the adjusted analysis, B12 deficiency was associated with a 9% increased risk of anemia, 5% of dementia, 7% of stroke, 9% of heart attacks. And associations with depression, Parkinson's disease, and inflammatory bowel disease were positive, but not statistically significant. And vitamin B12 is essential for human life. We can't make it. That's why it's a vitamin. Vitamins are things we have to get from our environment, from foods. Main sources are animal products, red meat, dairy, eggs. And what does B12 do in our body? Lots of different things, but it's important for making red blood cells, how we carry oxygen, making DNA, and playing a critical role in how the nervous system functions. So I want to take a second here and say how I approach diagnosing B12 deficiencies. So I'll screen for B12 specifically in people over the age of 60, people on metformin, those proton pump inhibitors, people who have hypothyroidism, GI disorders, people who are on GLPs, people with depression or anxiety. In my routine screenings, I look for markers that, when elevated, have been associated with deficient B12. And you can look at things like MCV, you can look at things like RDW. These things tend to be high in people who have B12 insufficiency. Of course, homocysteine is a marker I check on everyone, and it tends to be elevated in people who have B vitamin deficiencies. Now, if you look at the WHO level for B12 deficiency, I believe it's around 211. Now, that may be the level for deficiency, but I think we're starting to see in the literature that B12 insufficiency can happen at higher levels. There was a recent study looking at older adults where they saw changes in brain function, changes in processing speed, and more white matter hyperintensities, which are signs of brain inflammation on MRIs, and people who were below the mean level in that study, which was around 410. So it takes some detective skills to figure out, are we actually dealing with a B12 deficiency? You can't just rely on levels. You have to look at some of these other associated markers that use B12, like the MCV, the RDW, the homocysteine, and then look at other things like, are we having some cognitive issues going on or mental health issues? And that might be a sign of insufficient B12.